Well, good morning, good afternoon. Hi, welcome to this episode of Black Beat Podcast, where we want to bring you that kind of information and we don't want to hold back anything. It's important for y'all to understand and to get this context of what we're trying to offer, what we're trying to make sure that you understand is that the information we're bringing to you is credible information from the source. And today we got a couple of guests. Well, actually, I got a real special guest. I have Miss Fawn Aberson joining me in this episode. But today, on this episode, we have a couple special guests. We got Andrew Fitzpatrick. This is the Director of Economic Development for the Office of the Mayor, Ted Wheeler. And today also we have Matthew Thorup. Now, I really did like Matthew's last name. I just felt like he might have had a hammer or something when he came in here. But,
like a football player, right?
But yeah, that's that kind of Jim Thorpe kind of the kicker, right? And he is also working in the mayor's office as an audit section manager for the city of Portland. Welcome, guys, and we appreciate you guys coming on to the show today and sharing with us some information about what's going on downtown these days.
Good morning, thank you.
Yeah, well, it's our pleasure. Hey, guys, and also, I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to bring to light Miss Fawn Aberson, but good morning, Fawn.
Good morning. Yes, gentlemen. And so I've been working with Lawson Media for 20 years, and I focus a lot on the economic development articles that we do in the interviews. So I'm happy to be joining you under the leadership of my editor-in-chief, John Washington. Black Beat Podcast has been around for about 3 years now. So, as he said, we take an unapologetically Black approach to the critical conversations and topics that are affecting the community. And, this is a big one today, right? The Downtown Business Incentive Program, which is a part of the overall advanced economic strategy for the city of Portland, who, we've got some challenges out here, right? We've got some challenges. Before we get into it, I just want to remind everybody to please remember to click and subscribe the Black Beat Podcast, and please share it with your friends, and that includes you gentlemen too, okay?
Absolutely.
All right, so before we get started, can you guys just each, and one and then the other, just share us a little bit of background about your professional career and what brought you to the role that you have today.
Sure. Thanks, Fawn. First of all, thanks to you, Fawn, and thanks to John. Thanks to the Seoul Business District for having me, for having Matt as well, and the City of Portland. Just appreciate the opportunity to be able to share information about this resource.
You know how that works, baby.
And we want to also welcome feedback and input and responses from all the listeners that are on your program as well. It's really important for us to have that dialogue with everyone here. As Fawn said, obviously, the city's facing a lot of big challenges. And this is going to be a great conversation on one of the tools that we're using to address some of those challenges. But I'm Andrew Fitzpatrick. I've worked for the mayor for about 2 years as the economic development director for the city. And prior to that, worked in-house for Walmart as a state and local government affairs lead for the company. And then prior to that, worked in Congress and for the U.S. Agency for International Development. So I spent my career in economic development, private sector, public sector, a number of different capacities, and just wanted to come work in the city of Portland for the city because it's a city that I love and it's a place that I'm raising my family, and I appreciate the opportunity to work with you all on that.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, and I'm Matthew Thorup. I'm the audit section manager for the revenue division.
So not a football player.
Not a football player, no, not even related, unfortunately.
But do you have a hammer in your pocket?
Oh yeah,
It's in my backpack over Fawn made me put it off to the side. I've been with the city for about 5.5 years in the revenue division, so with their business tax program, arts tax, transient lodgings taxes. Prior to coming to the city, I worked for the Oregon Department of Revenue in their tax program as well, so I have a large tax background. Andrew has the economic background, and then prior to moving to Oregon, I worked for the city and county of Honolulu as a grant accountant.
So you weren't responsible for putting in and installing that high-speed rail that they got?
I left before that happened, but no.
That they installed or maybe didn't quite get
Well, it didn't quite get finished.
I think it's part of it's done. I think.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Okay, well, thanks, guys. So I guess let's dive in. As you alluded, the city is facing some challenges. I know that John and I, we had a chance to, I can't remember what the name of the company was, but it was in the big pink building. Mm-hmm. And we were there and they were offering small businesses and some other community members some of their stuff because they took 400 employees out of the building, and all of them are working from home except for 26 of them. And they were one of the last agencies to leave that building. So, and I know, from the revenue department, we depend on some of these large companies, taxes and things like that to run our city, quite frankly. So it's left a big gap. So can you want to talk to the problem first, and then we'll go into the opportunity?
Yeah, sure. I could start, and then Matt, you can
Okay.
add if I've left anything off. And Fawn, you pretty much described it well. Obviously, pandemic created a lot of hybrid and remote work, and that has created a lot of people that are no longer working in various areas of the city. Some employers have decided to leave the city.
Yeah.
And so we're working against that pattern of people working from home, or employers that are choosing not to stay in Portland any longer. As you said, our employers, from the very large to the very small, are the lifeblood of our city. They're creating all the family wage jobs that we have, the livelihoods that people rely on them for, and they're creating a lot of our tax base as well, which is what we need, obviously, to deliver services to the community as a whole. And so the pandemic has created a lot of problems for us. This was one tool that is part of the kind of city's 5-year economic development strategy that we're using to try to bring back the investment, to drive down the vacancy rates, both in office and in retail, and then to really bring back positive foot traffic that our workers, residents, visitors, that brings back kind of the vibrancy, all the small business spending that we want to see for the city that we love.
Okay, and so let's dig into
So
it. How does it work?
before you go, now you said that it was the pandemic. You guys are basing some of the narrative on the pandemic as some of the problem, but is there other problems that are mitigating along with that also?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we've seen.
That'll make you arrive to where you're at right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's all put into a historical context, of course, but what we're directly addressing over the last 3 years is just the upshot in vacancy rates, the reduction in employment, and the reduction in foot traffic. So we worked with the economics firm Eco Northwest to put some data around that.
Okay.
And then to decide, or to determine within the central city, which are these sub-districts that were most acutely affected, the ones that kind of have had the most economic distress. Some areas we know, like Albina, for example, there's a lot of different types of economic hardship that have happened over a course of decades, and more than decades. But this tool, is one small incremental step to try to deal with just the conditions on the ground that have unfolded over the last 3 to 4 years.
So what are those four sectors that you're focusing on?
Right now, the sub-districts of the central city that this program addresses are downtown, Old Town, Lower Albina, and Lloyd District. And we'll be happy to share some kind of a map that helps to make this clear. The Revenue Division has a helpful website, and Prosper Portland's produced a flyer and some other materials that different types of taxpayers, small businesses have found helpful in terms of understanding how the program works.
Gotcha.
But the reason that we decided on those 4 sub-districts to start with is just because the data around employment, vacancy levels, and foot traffic pointed to those as being the most negatively impacted over the last 3 to 4 years.
Right. So can you give us an overview of how the program works, Matt? Speak to that.
So this program is for businesses, obviously, in Portland, and to get the credit, they would first have to apply. So we have an application that we launched in early October. I think, as Andrew has mentioned, I think before this, is we've got about 20 thus far. The application due date is upcoming January 31st, 2024, for businesses who entered into a new lease during calendar year 23. The mayor and the city council, they passed this in September, but we're retroacting lease signings that happened back to January 1st, 2023. So even if they signed in April or May, they will be eligible to apply for this credit. And then once they apply for the credit, it's a pretty simple application. We just this Monday launched our online application form. So it used to be a paper form. Now we have a way to do it online. Pretty simple, basic, just business information. Ask for their account number that they have with the Revenue Division, and then just asks for what sub-district that they're new lease or extending their lease in or own their office space in, the address of that business, and then if they're going to have that 15 employee minimum. Once they submit that application, within 45 days, they'll get a notification from us whether they were approved or denied for the credit. And then they claim the credit starting in the tax year that they apply for. So if they apply for 2023, those taxes are generally due on April 15th of 2024. So, 6-ish months away, 5 months away.
But you know what I'm curious about, Fawn? I'm curious about what was the process to get you guys to arrive to this decision? I was just curious, what was the input, the content input that sort of drove the direction that this goes? What made you guys decide to come to
From
this?
a tax break standpoint?
Yeah. I mean, just what emoted to arrive you guys to this state
on the tax
tax?
conversation.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's a novel idea. It's new. No other city that we know of in the country has actually pursued this or
Okay.
adopted it. So this is something that we came up with based on a lot of different consultation with different stakeholders. So, Prosper Portland being the city's economic development agency, but also Eco Northwest being the external kind of economics consultant, and then members of the community, especially people who are involved with small businesses that are making decisions about whether or not to renew their lease or to sign a new lease in the city. So we talked to a lot of different brokers, commercial real estate agents, building owners, and then on the tenant side, businesses that were on the fence about whether or not to actually renew their lease and continue to be here or not. And just to add to what Matt said before as well, it's really the most important criteria of all the criteria is that you're entering into or renewing a lease for at least 4 years, and that you're bringing your workers back, 15 of them at least, half the time of the week. So like 20 hours of a standard 40-hour week.
And I'm just trying to clear out some of the weeds to get some.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
But when you think about how many years, how much time transpired before this activation of conversation? What were some indicators, and how much time had gone by before you guys started seeing that we were heading into some Mayday type of situation?
I'd say for this project in particular, we started looking at the proposals perhaps 5 to 6 months before City Council eventually unanimously with a 5-0 vote approved it in September of this year. And then credit to Revenue Division, they really swooped in very quickly after Council adopted the measure under an emergency to then put all the paperwork in place, both physical paperwork and online paperwork, to make it as easy and understandable as possible.
Okay.
And then we've just had our office, the mayor, with Prosper Portland, Revenue, and others to try to answer questions and make it as accessible and understandable to everyone in the community as possible.
But what made the Mayday? Were businesses fleeing? Were people living downtown? What was?
I don't know
what
that
was
there
some
was
of the indicators, man? I mean, something was happening to make you guys have to arrive to.
I don't think there was like a Mayday moment. I think it was just more of a
forecast.
We see that the Central Business District, which includes all these sub-districts that we talked about, has an official 26% vacancy rate. That seems to be ticking higher. Eco Northwest tells us that the vacancies that we do have won't really be filled up for 10 years or more based on the current trend lines.
Wow.
We know that many people are still not coming back to work in person in various industries with various employers from a number of different sources. If you look at the foot traffic data that we have, which comes from kind of a big aggregate data of cell phones, that office workers are only about 50 to 55% return relative to 2019 numbers. And then we just talked to so many different small businesses in terms of retail storefronts, restaurants, diners, bars, clubs, others that tell us they're suffering because they don't have that foot traffic that comes from all of the office workers.
Oh boy, don't we understand that?
I know,
over here on this side. The
preaching to the choir on this for sure.
Just ain't been happy about all that. But
So
anyway,
are you, okay, so just quickly for the application process.
Sure.
So what I understand is that you have to have at least 15 employees. You have to have been in business by 2023 with these 15 employees in order to get the credit for 2024, right? So you can be a brand new business with 15 employees if you've established in 2023?
Yeah, you can apply the credit to either tax year 23 or tax year 24. But it's a one-time only credit up to the $250,000.
So is it, and that's the other thing, so you get $250,000, but you have to sign a 4-year lease. So is it like put out over the 4 years, like 50,000 the first year, 50,000? Can you claim all 250 in the first year? How does that work?
So, go ahead.
Oh yeah. So,
cool, Thor.
so the 250,000 is one of the thresholds.
Okay.
There are a few other limitations. where there is that's the maximum credit, and then it would be claimed over the 4 years of that lease, and so you would take 25% every year. But then the other limitations would be the size of the office that you're renting. And so there's a $30 per square foot limitation. So you don't want someone taking a big credit but only leasing 10 square feet downtown or in Albina. So there is a lease perspective where we're comparing it to the size of the lease with the $30 per square foot cost, as well as the size of the business. And so there's a 1% also limit on the Portland business income subject to tax, and so it would scale based on the size of the business that's applying for it. But then it would be claimed, you calculate it on that first year, so depending on in tax year 23 or 24, that's your maximum credit, but then you divide that by 4 and you take it over the 4 years.
And you have to do that evenly? I mean.
Yes, it'd be evenly.
And then, so you couldn't wait till like year 4 or go all to 50 or anything like that. Okay, and then the other thing is, the attestation process or the burden of proof. How complicated is that for someone every year to have to turn that in? Because I think some of the barriers are like, I don't want to go through a bunch of paperwork to prove
it's always
that fill out this 26-page application. So what's that process like to claim it?
We're still more or less refining it, but ultimately we want it to be as easy as possible for them to claim it, and so it could be as simple as a statement attached to their city's tax return saying, yes, I met this requirement. We were talking about this earlier. There is still an accountability side of the credit because we want to make sure that people aren't just submitting this statement saying, and so they could be subject just under the normal course of business. We might ask to verify something in behind under audit. Compare, hey, did you really have 15 employees working? And then that might be where it gets a little bit more burdensome, but as far as applying for it and then sending that attestation, we want it to be as simple as possible, and so we're kind of just gearing it towards a simple statement to the tax return of I'm claiming this credit, and yes, it might even just be a checkbox saying, yep, I had 15 employees that were here half their time.
So the attestation is exactly, that's really just your word. You're saying as an employer, as a business, you have satisfied this requirement, you have at least 15 workers back half the time. And then the city's saying, we trust you, but now you're subject to us verifying that. Yeah. Basically. And so, we hope everyone's just going to live up to that. But of course, we just want to make good use of taxpayer money and not give something that, is not being actually complied with in terms of the rules.
So in layman's terms.
This is tax policy. For the listeners on
for those, there you go. I mean, because part of the medium in which we hope to support is this ability to inform and relate information that is complicated to some degree to a demographic that may turn off their ear to complication. That's just some more complication that they're putting in front of us. We got to. So in layman's terms, if you were a business interested in coming into downtown, take me through that process in some simplification in terms of what it would be like to be able to do this, what you have to do this.
Yeah, so the first thing, if you're doing business in the city, would be registering with the Revenue Division. Every business that's operating, they have to be registered with the city, us here at the Revenue Division. From there, it's just a 4-question application. What's the address? Are you new lease, extended lease, or do you own your space? And then will you have 15 employees or more working at least half their time? That simple. Like I said, we had it on paper. Now it's online. If you are signing a lease or extending your lease, we would just need a copy of the lease to verify that, yes, you are actually leasing that space. And then from there, it's as simple as when you file your taxes that you would for the IRS, the state of Oregon, you then file your city's tax return. Attach a piece of paper or a statement that says, yep, I had that 15 employee attestation. I had 15 employees working half their time, and you claim the credit on the return. And to me, that's simple. I'm a tax guy. So I'm hoping that's simple enough.
Let me tell you something. I get shivers every time my tax person comes and talks to me about all
Absolutely.
this.
So is there support out there? Is there some mentorship or support out there for these businesses to get some help with this?
Yeah, so at the Revenue Division, we have a website, portland.gov/revenue/DBI for Downtown Business Incentive. Has a lot of this same information that we're talking about today, a little bit of the historical context, how to apply, who qualifies, how to claim the credit. Has a map that Andrew said we could share.
But is there some hands-on technical support, some mentorship, some professionals that are helping said organizations.
Yeah, we have
walk
a
through it.
phone number they can call our office, and we have people that are trained on giving help on people who want to have questions or need help applying for the credit,
Okay.
as well as an email inbox. And those are both on that same webpage I mentioned, the phone number and the email address. They can contact us, and someone will get a hold of them to help them out.
And then in addition to that, on the city side, you have Prosper Portland, who has the small business hub, who actually have people that will offer that technical assistance to try to help people kind of demystify, understand better how to use this program. And then we've worked with some of the
Right.
business associations to try to
Yeah.
educate them
There you
Right.
go.
They can
Well,
educate
yeah,
their
a little bit of
members.
education.
Right.
as well.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we recognize that at least some demographics got a little bit of a complication or difficulty dealing on the Prosper side.
Mhm.
So, I mean, if you can make that process a little bit less complicated, I think you might be able to get some traction on demographics that historically you hadn't gotten before. So,
Let's
But-
ask the one question, John, and then we want to move into the how it mixes with the big strategy of the city's economic
overall
strategy.
economic strategy.
But the
yeah.
one question I think John and I were talking about, and we saw it recently, as he alluded, here in our district, the Seoul district, Northeast Portland, where Flossin has had its home for 20 years. We're entering our 20-year anniversary, by the way. Thank you, everybody, for this
Congratulations.
Congress.
Yeah, that's a huge
And
milestone.
it is, yeah. It's been in business in the city of Portland for 20 years, and it's been quite a journey. But so we, just recently saw the Nike factory store close on MLK Junior Boulevard. Just devastating, as
Right.
John alluded to it. The news hit us like a lead balloon, I think is what he
Yeah,
said,
it
right?
dropped like a lead balloon. yeah.
And but then having those conversations with Nike, they said, well, we may reimagine ourselves again at a later time, not at this location, but at another location. And it got us thinking about this program. Are you having any concerns that you might be relocating a viable business in another part of town to this part of town? Has that been a concern at all? And if you do, how do you address that
I think,
concern?
in other words, are you pulling businesses from one sector and putting them in another and claiming
And then leaving a blight.
victory
Yeah.
when you're leaving a blight someplace else?
Yeah.
Or are you actually searching for new businesses outside and bringing them in and those types of things?
Yeah, I think the intention of the program is to retain the businesses that we have where they already are for hopefully 8, 12, 15 more years
There you
in
go.
that place, or to bring new companies in from even outside of Portland metro area, or outside of Oregon, or outside of even the country, to be in Portland with this additional incentive that helps them invest and bring people into those spaces. So the intent is not to move someone from one sub-district or one area of the city to another, although anytime you create something that's artificial, like this is in the market, there could be that does happen, but that's certainly not our intent with this program.
Gotcha.
And we haven't seen any evidence of it yet, and so
Okay.
we'd love to figure out ways, because we are still learning and no other city has done this, to continue to enhance and improve the program so that we address that issue if it is happening.
So then how does a district, when a district loses a big economic driver, right? And you recognize the gap in that whole aspect of that. I mean, and when you think about Nike's exiting, it's almost been a year.
Well, and Walmart,
And also
he used to work for
Target,
Walmart, they're
question of
leaving,
Target,
there's lots
you
of
know.
folks leaving.
So, but as a district, it's kind of difficult. How does the district begin to replace drivers like that? And is anyone really actually at the city looking at the impact of those types of things? Andrew, because Nike's been out of the district for
A year.
now a year now, and the small businesses in the district along the MLK corridor are really suffering
Yeah,
as a
similar to
result of
downtown,
it
yeah.
because there's no economic driver down there. I mean, where do these businesses, where does the districts, the business districts, where do they turn to for support and help in a situation like that? Because generally the districts don't have enough revenue in their own to replace these types of situations or to even begin to address them. How does the city step in and support those types of situations?
Yeah, I mentioned the Eco Northwest study that showed central city impacts. They also did a study that shows all the different situations across, like with different data sets across neighborhood business districts, including a lot of areas in the MLK corridor. And I'm happy to share that with your listeners as well, because it shows that
Really
you
appreciate
can't look at Portland as a whole. You have to look at different neighborhood by neighborhood dynamics in terms of what drives the jobs there, how many different employers are there, what kind of industries, kind of where is the economy in that specific area. So we look within the city with a lot of nuance at what are the different kind of parts of the economy in different areas. And we know that store was a huge economic
Huge driver,
impact.
yeah.
It created a lot of customer flow. It had
There
a lot
you
of
go.
jobs there. And then all the spillover to the other businesses, the
Tax
park,
revenue for the
the tax
city.
revenue was huge.
Yeah.
So, we're committed to trying to fill that gap in that specific case. That's, but we need to also address like overall conditions, like improving safety, improving livability, and then creating programs that benefit the whole area together. So it's both the individual case of that one, huge driver, but it's also the conditions more broadly in the neighborhood and figuring out what the
The
community
districts become part of that equation in terms of restoration and development and all those types of things, or is someone down there making the decisions for a district without the district being a part of it?
No, I think the programs and initiatives should be totally kind of co-created with the community. I don't think it should be, here's what the data says, here's what we're going to design for you from the city to the community. I think it should be, here's what we're seeing, what are you seeing in the community, how do we create something together that's going to meet the needs based on the resources that the city has, the staff, and the other types of financial resources that we can bring to bear.
We appreciate that, Andrew.
Yeah,
that
of course.
information. So I know Ms. Aberson always likes to keep a technical drive as to where we're headed. So come on there, drive us home.
So yeah, I think number one, before we leave this topic, how many applications have you gotten so far?
So far we've gotten 19.
19
Yeah,
applications.
so
Okay.
there's still plenty. I mean, this just passed 2 months ago, and people are learning about it, getting their, getting all that stuff figured out. And so the first deadline is January 31st, 2024. So would expect quite a bit more. It's holiday time.
That's good. Then you're getting some acceleration.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that
We want to
driver is
continue
working
this
as a driver.
to
Yeah.
scale it a lot.
Right, and you can start a business or bring a business here in 2024 as well. And
Correct.
That's
through
right.
the entirety of 2024 or through January 31st?
So excuse me, it would be the entirety of 2024.
Yeah.
So just coming in at some
Yeah.
point during calendar year 24, and then again, new lease, extending your lease for that 4 years or more.
So of these 19 applications so far, are those mostly extended lease applications, or are you seeing new people move in? Are you seeing out-of-state businesses respond to this? And what's been your outreach to get the word out about this?
I believe it's mostly been extensions. I'd have to give you more.
Yeah, that makes
More
sense.
as it starts to come in and we learn more about the trends as a whole, because we do want to kind of learn from those and then adjust the program if we need to, both in terms of like geography, but maybe also criteria that are
Right,
working or
right.
not working in terms of benefiting the people that
Right,
we want
demographic
to.
issues. Yeah.
Yeah.
But tribute to the work that Revenue has done, we did a real broad outreach strategy in terms of, I think, 112,000, 115,000 mailers.
Yeah, we got one.
mail that went out. That's good that you got one.
Yeah.
Email blasts that went out to everybody,
You got
some
one,
social
too.
media.
Yep.
And then we've used, of course, the mayors and other channels in the city just to continue to spread that word out there and direct people to the resources online. But we know there's still a lot of people that need to know or need to know more about it. So we stand ready to continue to disseminate that out there.
So how would you work with, okay, so as we alluded, Flossin Media, we're a small business, been in the city for 20 years. We do media marketing and outreach, right? And I noticed that let's switch to your Advanced Portland, the 5-year strategic growth. So you have 5 initiatives down there. Propel exclusive economic growth and innovation. Promote equitable wealth. Foster a vibrant central city and commercial district, like the ones we've been, the program you've been talking about.
Mhm.
And then connect Portlanders to a high quality jobs and future ready sectors. So, I think John and I both represent in our 20-year history as a business, we recognize the need to get involved, right? In civic life, right?
We
State,
appreciate that.
county,
Yeah.
city, that kind of stuff. We're also a big part of the Seoul District Business Association framework, and that's inner Northeast from, Broadway to Columbia Interstate to Northeast 33rd.
Yeah.
And so in looking at that, like what are the opportunities for small businesses in this?
Or
Well,
that's
actually,
not
no, wait,
culturally
wait, John.
specific.
I forgot. So I was talking about the plan, right?
Okay.
So in this plan, in the economic growth sector, you outlined athletic and outdoor, green cities, food and beverage manufacturing, metals and machinery, software and media, right? So can you
Oh, you found media in there? No.
Yeah. So, and I think about businesses that can scale, right? Obviously, if you've been in business for 20 years, so I have to put my personal hat on. It's like,
Of course.
how can the city help my business scale, right? We want to be that $1 million business.
Right.
And we feel like we can be. So how would we now work with you to get there?
Yeah, so the 5 sectors, the 5 industries that you kind of listed there are really the clusters where we feel like we're the strongest. Cluster being like a lot of different firms,
Right.
either horizontal competitors or vertical that are involved in the same type of work
Right.
along a different kind of value chain. Media is one of the critical industries, but we have a lot of local industries too, like healthcare, construction, that have all sorts of small business opportunities as well. Those ones are just the what we call traded sector. So like goods and services that we export, goods and services that draw in a lot of outside investment into the city and then help our whole city grow, and then do benefit all the other local industries like construction and healthcare and local services and things like that. So media is a huge one for us. How does a media company get involved? I mean, Prosper Portland really is the main economic development agency kind of opening for most people to start to look at different programs that might suit their needs. But of course, there are a lot of other small business related activities that are not city driven. For example, I saw that Port of Portland is doing some great work with small businesses that will be in the new airport spaces.
Right.
So that's an example of another economic development activity that's not really the city, it's the port. But then you also have a lot of private sector, not-for-profits, like Seoul Business District, that are doing great TA. They're connecting people to resources. They're helping them navigate all these things.
Right.
So it's not just the city like being the lifeline or the driver. It's the city being one part and helping to convene and connect to different resources that are needed to grow.
Right. And then there's the film and event office too now that's
just
been
created
good.
over the last couple of years. Yep.
So and then you've also made a big commitment to equity, right? Diversity and equity.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at this program, are you guys is someone actively trying to recruit more BIPOC businesses to this incentive program, more BIPOC businesses to downtown or to the city in general?
And there's more to that conversation. I mean, when you look at the historical understanding of urban design development, and there was always the history has always been a cultural relevance to that. And usually that was reflective of the growth in the demographics as transitions, right? At one point in time, Italians owned a neighborhood, the next day you find Hispanics are in it, or Irish, or whoever, right? And so it was, and then the businesses were reflective of that growth. And Portland as a small city, is kind of like unique because it's got the framework of the whitest city in America and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
So we, to some degree, have to make a stronger conscious effort to recruit and to be a part of that kind of nurturing and that development to make sure that there's equity in those. So what, are there any kind of special kind of things that you guys doing to ensure that there's some equity in from a cultural standpoint of view that comes into this environment?
I mean, the first thing is what we already talked about in terms of the outreach, like making a concerted effort to ensure that all different diverse communities in the city.
That's why you're sitting here. Yeah, I get
Yeah, a little bit. But I want everyone to know what it is, how they can use it, and how it'll benefit them, and then seriously offer them the opportunity to shape it. Like, we stand ready to reform, tweak, adjust this. If it's not working in the way that it was supposed to, let's go back and try to fix some of those things, either with an additional ordinance or some administrative rulemaking with our partners in the Bureau to try to make sure it's working in an equitable way for everybody at all.
Got you.
Economic justice is something that I think the mayor, I feel really deeply about trying to support because that lifts everybody up.
Yeah, man. All
So-
boats rise. Yeah.
Andrew Colas said the other day, describing his own personal story, like if we're successful in centering equity in a development strategy like Fawn described, like way more diverse people will want to come to Portland and to Oregon. So, that could be one of the goals because that in and of itself is an amazing, beyond just being the right thing to do in creating justice, it's a huge driver. You're taking in all these incredible talents and skills of different people who otherwise are underserved and not participating and then not benefiting from the growth that we have.
You let Andrew know it took a team to get him there.
So, of course, yeah.
You guys,
I know.
So, but is there any intentional recruiting in cities outside to draw businesses here? So we've met with a couple of data analysis firms, some tech folks, right? And, our conversations with them have been like, oh, Silicon Valley is in California, but it's hard to get in anymore. Obviously, Seattle's tech firms and software firms are booming. And now we're seeing more of it flow down to Portland now, which I think is a real opportunity.
Mhm.
And that there's a lot more diversity in tech as well. And that's why I'm saying I would like to see, and I'm wondering if there's some intentional recruitment. I know you guys have set up some good, foundation, some good cement, you're building the walls and stuff, and now we got to fill it. And so sometimes that takes some, culturally responsive agencies and organizations to help fulfill
Intentionality.
the next level of that plan. Is any of that being done? And
As far
if
as-
so, where?
Yeah, as far as recruitment from outside of Portland, Greater Portland Inc., led by Monique Claiborne, is
Oh, yeah,
doing
Monique,
a lot
okay.
of that great recruitment from outside of Oregon. And I think that they are looking at a lot of different firms that are diverse or have different commitments to diversity. I mean, we see that as one of the strengths that Portland has, is trying to embrace that, accentuate that. And so GPI is doing a lot of that great work, and I think it is having some success with it. The other great thing that I saw recently was that Lance Randall, Black Business Association of Oregon, helped to spearhead and announce this new dashboard,
Oh, yeah.
just to kind of baseline how underperforming we have been, like everywhere else virtually in the rest of the country, and then what is the roadmap for us to improve in terms of the equity that we actually have or don't have.
Right, and I think also the Department of Administrative Services, and I know Jesse Hyatt, the former president of the Black American Chamber, helped finish that off, and they, showed the contracting across the state.
Huge
I
issue.
think they interviewed 1,067 executive agencies and examined $3.2 billion. Matthew. if you could remember that. And 0.1% went to Black-owned firms, and most of that is in construction. It's hard for it seems hard for outside of construction for a lot of these other businesses to get the momentum they need to grow to scale. But we know if we can get the momentum to grow the scale, we're going to pour into the tax system. We're going to improve the city and state's economy and the programs. Do you guys feel like equal investment is going into small businesses as it is to some of these social services program? Because it feels like, as a small business owner of 20 years, that a lot of people are standing on our shoulders, but we don't often get to stand on others' shoulders. And we'd like to exchange views once in a while, right? We'd like to see what it looks like at the top of the world. Any thoughts on that?
I think there's always a lot more that we could be doing. We are spending a lot on some of the crises that we have on our streets right now, and so that is a huge issue that we're dedicating a lot of resources to, but we need to also continue to invest resources in the parts of our economy that are needed to continue to grow and lift us all up. Like you said, they're totally related to each other. The tax base is what affords us the ability to deliver the services. If we don't have a robust tax base, we don't have the ability to spend on all these services. So the 5 industry clusters that we're talking about, I mean, those are just some areas that I think there are a lot of opportunities. But that doesn't mean that people just need to figure it out on their own. We need to, of course, be there for them to design different programs that are actually tailored to meet their needs.
Yeah. A man awaits a new society, well, a new society
awaits a new man. Who was that, Hobbes or Maslow? And whenever we think about that, there's so much we can unpack here. But guys, we do appreciate you guys coming in and talking a little bit about this one specific issue. Yeah, man.
It's a complicated subject.
Yeah. And trying to somehow continue to as you're dealing with the social aspect or the social condition of a society, we're constantly looking at trying to stabilize it also with those healthy and positive things. So, and in my mind today is that we're investing way too much in the essence of homelessness, and because I think there's a lot more moving parts to that we're not addressing. And if we just keep looking at it as homelessness, I don't necessarily think we'll get to the bottom of that bucket, because that bucket keeps getting poured into. But I think we have to close the gates off of the things that are creating the adverse conditions in the first place. So, and then of course we have to always keep reinforcing the tax base or people who are capable of stepping up, being a part of those things. And so we need to feed them too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Making sure that they're alive. And
Yeah.
so guys, listen, man, but Fawn, was there
I just wanna
something
get-
else yet?
I want to get some feedback, right? You said, so where can people give feedback, and can you remind them one more time about where they can apply the websites and stuff?
Yeah, so the website for getting more information about the credit and then
Or
the steps on
applying,
how to
yeah.
apply is portland.gov/revenue/DBI for the downtown business incentive credit. A lot of information there, has links on how to apply, phone numbers, emails if you have questions about how to navigate all of that as far as getting the application in.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the feedback.
Yeah, feedback can come to me. Andrew.fitzpatrick@portlandoregon.gov.
Ooh, you really
So
put it out there just now.
I can assure you that I've
He's
Do you
invested.
have a bullseye on the back of it? or-
in fact I do.
Well, that's his job.
I listen to a lot of hard talk from a lot of different parts of the community, and I think that's the only way that we're true public servants. So we need to, respond to that and take it seriously and try to adjust based on what people need.
Okay, well, we'll have that information here on our screen, and, we just ask you guys to continue to click like and subscribe and share this very important information with our podcast. And John, you want to do some closing remarks?
Oh boy,
what
you
we heard?
already know. Just one of them barn burners, and there's so many more doors we didn't open up.
Of course.
But on Flawson's side is to bring to light formulas for successful living. They don't have to be ours.
Yep.
They're out there. Our job is to simply discover them and bring them to light.
Yep.
To our people in the communities in which we support and continue to try to build. And for me here, I think that these kinds of issues have always been the gray area. Some of us are able to benefit from them and others aren't and for a variety of different reasons, but let's not have it be because of the lack of information, okay? And from the media side, that's what we're important about, is making sure we toe that line and make sure that we can simplify this enough for those people who may have some impediment, some difficulties grasping information, some desire to be resistant, whatever those things are. Hey, look it. When you can hear somebody talking some language that you can understand, get hold of the news and get on about the business of getting on about the business.
Yeah.
So y'all, listen here, we appreciate you guys coming into Black Beat Podcast today. Hey, what we bring to light formulas for successful living. And again, thank you very much, gentlemen, for showing up and sharing with our demographic about some of these topics that are complicated to understand.
Yeah,
Thank you so much to you and all the listeners. Really appreciate it.
Hey, man, we appreciate you guys, Andrew. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you.